of our sustainable series here at the Township. That's a collaborative effort between Radnor Township, the League of Women Voters, the Radnor Conservancy, and we again welcome you all. We have a great group of presenters tonight, of which two I know fairly well, and two that I'm very excited to hear a little more about their businesses and their operations. First, my name is Mark Janicek, and I'm a resident here in Radnor Township, and I'm a big green building advocate. I'm a residential building contractor. I'm the immediate past chair of the residential circle of the Delaware Valley Green Build Council, and also close to home, a very important project to me and to our community is the preservation of the Willows Cottage in Radnor Township, of which ultimately we anticipate and hope putting in a educational, sustainable center at the Willows Park. So keep your eyes and ears in tune to that project, because I think it's a great asset for our community that further brings awareness to the whole sustainable initiative movement and supports a lot of what you're going to be hearing tonight from our four panelists. So that being said, tonight we have Charlie Zadrati, who is a residential architect who is the founder and president of a company called Green and Save. And Charlie will be our first presenter, and will give you a lot of great information on some of the techniques and tips to getting your house a little more energy efficient and a little greener. We also have Josh Hilbert tonight. Josh Hilbert is the president and owner of GHR Consulting Services, an environmental engineering organization. And Josh is going to speak on various grants and tax credits and funding type options that are available as it relates to energy efficiency. We also have Rich Schlesinger from PECO. Rich is part of PECO's smart metering and energy programs and the Act 129 program. And Rich is going to give us some great information from where PECO stands on smart metering and a couple other programs. And then lastly, we have Sean Crane, who is the co-founder with Hometown Green, which is a great organization that I've had the pleasure of working with. They're what Sean says, a boutique energy auditor, and I love that because I consider myself to be a boutique residential builder. So, and Sean has done a great job for me on some of my own projects, so I could speak hands-on that he really does a great job and knows his stuff. So at that point, I thank you again for attending. What we're going to do is have the speakers come up and speak for approximately 20 minutes each, plus or minus, and then what we'll do is we'll hold some questions to the end of the presentation. And this is a very casual, informal presentation. Feel free to raise your hand to ask some questions. I think this is a great group of people that really could add some insight and some clarification to the whole green sustainable movement, and of course specifically to energy efficiency. So on that end, Charlie, join us and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. We're going to dig right in, and I think what's an incredible opportunity now is to look at the landscape first. 25% of the world's power is consumed by this country, but we only have 5% of the population, and that means we've got a lot of room to work with in terms of creating those efficiencies. We also have about 40% of that consumption coming from homes and offices, which means all of us in this room can take a part in creating that American energy independence that we strive for. When we talk about home improvement, it looks like about $300 billion a year is typically spent in that industry. Now, with housing starts screeching to a halt, what ends up happening is dollars are still being spent by homeowners, because instead of buying the house that has the dream kitchen, they are now looking for the cost-effective ways to renovate what they have. And that means those numbers are holding their ground in an interesting way that a lot of the state and the federal public servants don't necessarily see, because they aren't the feet on the street. When it comes to new tax opportunities, the federal government's on board. I've had the pleasure of working on the Green Economy Task Force, meeting with senators like Arlen Specter and Casey to help shape some of the programs. And actually, before Specter switched from being a Republican to a Democrat, we were down there helping to convince him, right on Capitol Hill, to vote for the Rescue Act. So happy to see that go through, and the tax incentives really are helping to drive this whole movement. When it comes to smart energy and green choices, it's not just homeowners, it's now the small business owners that really start to see the value, and ultimately, efficiency becomes the mantra. I put up a slide with just a little bit of my background so you know that from the architecture standpoint, it's one thing to talk about space and aesthetics. It's a whole nother thing to have a LEED accredited professional status, to be a certified BPI energy auditor. This is about a 2-decade career, including a thesis coming out of the University of Pennsylvania that I called then eco-humanism, that, believe it or not, no one cared much about, 16, 17 years ago. So it's actually great when you see a $4 gallon of gas like last summer kickstart America into some smart thinking. It's been a long but welcomed wait. When it comes to what we're going to talk about tonight, show and tell is often a great way to get the ball rolling. So I spent about 4 years of research and a piece of that doing the physical construction, converting a 1950s incredibly inefficient home into one that is one of the most energy efficient in the United States. The challenge was not just to build from scratch, because that's a luxury. It was to take a model of something that we have. There's a lot of housing stock in this country, and start to look at the ways to convert it into something that could be truly held up at the stylistic level as well as the functional level. And so saving money was a paramount concern. Saving the planet was also on the list, but also making something that felt like it wasn't one of these biodomes, like it wasn't something that felt like it dropped in from a spaceship was part of the concern. This home is out in Wayne, just up the street, and it's one of those projects that I feel, met its goals. We learned down the road from various realtors that there was also some significant equity that we were able to build into it, and we did it at $125 a square foot with the addition and renovations, which is the U.S. average. So this was not about some Leo DiCaprio, Cameron Diaz, spend a big budget to just be part of the green scene. This was looking at the core way that we could all start to move in the right direction. What we bought for a few $100,000 was about an 1,800 square foot ranch-style house, slated basically for demolition, meaning the builders that were looking at this were thinking of it as a teardown. But when you look at the cost and the impact on the environment, about 25% of landfills are filled with construction debris. We built this sense of disposability, and we built the addition without even using a dumpster. We saved the entire existing home, and we built up and around it. This home, and you're going to see the next photo, is inside this house. So literally the 3 sliders there in the middle are the original opening. The windows and everything else are intact, and we built off of the back, not unlike a Pennsylvania bank barn, by using a passive geothermal component with the ground temperature, as well as, up top, a 6.2K photovoltaic system and a solar thermal hot water heating system. Collectively, the combination of the PV and the solar thermal heat the house because we run the hot water into a radiant floor system. It also provides the hot water for all the domestic uses, the showers, the dishwashers, everything you can think of. And what we end up doing then is using the electricity for the air conditioning and also for all the electronics. So what we do is really go to the renewability level and only make it work because of the reduction, double insulated walls, the smart windows. We had to start by being smart with how we use power, not even incandescent or CFLs, but the LED lights, and I'm going to get into some of that conversation too. So challenge 1 is to reduce down to even the water consumption with the shower head so that we weren't burning extra fossil fuel to literally heat the water for the showers. On the front side, we still use the same front red door, kept the entire house, and built, here it goes, up and over to literally skin this box. And what's exciting is to see the way the neighbors can drive by and not necessarily know that it happens to be so energy efficient. This is not about putting the green out on the sleeves. When it comes to the floor plan, the tan area is the existing, and then the bump outs to fill the corner for the master bath, and then the larger family room and eating kitchen are on the back side, facing south, right? That was an interesting consideration, to say the least. When it comes to upstairs, it's a cape, basically. So you have bedrooms and bathrooms and lofts and offices for the home use all throughout the property. And we'll take a look through the back. even using the old flagstone from the existing patio, instead of letting the cracked and chipped ones go to waste, buying the diamond bit blade and chopping them up to use as stepping stones. Everything was about salvage and reuse as well as high-tech efficiency. Inside, what you end up having is an open floor plan with the family room and the kitchen, and it's really about meeting some of the needs from the client that happened to be my wife to make it something that was also party-friendly. This is the house when the Obama team asked to host the Clean Tech for Obama fundraiser back in October. I said, sure, and it turns out about 6 months later on Earth Day, I had the invitation to teach his daughter and then her second grade class the conservation program for the school. So it's nice when the administration gets on board with generally the trends that seem to make a lot of sense. Inside, again, you wouldn't necessarily see that this was a radiant floor system, but the idea of thermal mass and having 1.25 inches of gypcrete below the tile means there's about 14,000 pounds of masonry in this house, and it holds the heat. So even when the sun goes down in the winter, now there's an opportunity, not unlike the way a sponge holds water, to start to release that heat back out. All those things start to combine with the zero VOC paint, the Energy Star appliances, the low-flow faucets, collectively and aggregating all those savings. When it comes to furniture, salvaged furniture, reupholstered, even the quilt that's on the back side of that sofa is made from my high school flannel shirts that my dear mother stitched together. So, there's a little sense of thrift, I think, which isn't a bad thing. We may have lost a little bit of that in the 80s and the boom 90s, and now it may be back. When it comes to sun tunnels and skylights and 5-speed reversible ceiling fans, we really went to every length to think of what could be done to create efficiencies. Those little sort of domes on the side of the house, they're actually the caps to the sun tunnels. If anyone's interested, we have it at Green and Save all the data about the payback and the performance. But for a few $100s, you basically get light for the next 5 decades. And it's one of those things where if the room is right, it really makes sense to look for things that maybe we didn't grow up with in our own houses. Inside, from the crazy wallpaper to the shot on the right with the light coming through the door, even translucent panels, inset and doors, provides an opportunity to share light, which means you can walk into rooms and you don't necessarily always have to turn the lights on. It's not unlike the spirit of those sun tunnels. When it comes to the bathroom, even having the floor run with the radiant heat in the shower, so with various thermostatic temperature gauges that speak to the basement solar tank, we're now priming the shower, and it's warm on the floor in the morning at about 6:45. Double insulated cellular curtains, the low tech that seems pretty obvious. Well, the air is trapped inside those cavities versus just a mini blind. The opposite would be a higher cost when you come to a curtain system instead of a rod, which lets the air circulate behind it. Now by running a cap on the top and letting the drapes touch the floor when they're closed, all of a sudden we're getting some incredible thermal advantage, and we found a NASA-like fiber that basically traps air, which is stitched inside those curtains. Well, knowing where you live in the house is pretty interesting. We shut those curtains in the summer during the day, but in the winter, since it's on the south side, we will leave them open. So on the way to work, we're going to start opening certain things and closing them based on where we are on the planet. I always joke with my 4-year-old, because he has a compass, that a tool like this, as simple as it is so incredibly important. I've seen realtors that might talk about a sunroom in a house, but in fact it's on like the northwest corner. They're not getting a lot of sun. So when we do home efficiency checkups and we do a lot of the reporting, coaching homeowners into how to operate their home as an organism, not just an object, is part of the rhythm of our sort of methodology. Even a stair that is made from, it's basically ACL Industries up in Stamford, Connecticut built it. They built the USS Roosevelt. It's made from about 600 cases of recycled aluminum beer cans. Everything that we did down to the sisal rug and the bamboo floor was about looking at sustainability as well as energy. Here's another shot of the back, and I'm going to basically talk just for a second about those panels tie into the basement to this system. So the thermal tank that I designed holds about 400 gallons of water, and what it ends up doing is circulating as a closed loop the water from the roof. So what you do is heat up water from the sun. Any of us understand that with a bucket of water, it's a lot easier to heat up water than it is to make electricity from the sun. So the primary assignment here is to bring the hot water in. It happens that the pumps that circulate the water are also powered by the solar panels, which are the photovoltaics. From that coil, you now have hot water that never leaves that tank. It's basically a heat sink. It's like a battery. What you do is draw the water and heat from it only by running another copper line that is circulated into the floor system. The third line is for the potable water, which runs into all of your domestic. If we need a lift in the dead of winter, we have the on-demand tankless system as a backup. That's a Takagi TK3, which runs about 7.2 gallons per minute, which gives us the ability at any fixture to run simultaneous showers as well as washing machines and dishwashers throughout the home. This actually was featured on the cover of Inventor's Digest magazine, not to be confused with Investor's Digest, which has slightly more readers. But that was a nice, I think, moment in family history to at least get to that level. When it comes to questions, we find that people always ask about the payback. You know, when am I going to get my money back from all these green initiatives? And, you know, with reducing utility bills, that's becoming more and more important. What I did is broke this down where there are hundreds of examples, but picked 5 tactics just to speak to this evening. One is the shower head. This is a pretty incredible statistic. A $40 high-efficiency shower head can save more money than about $4,000 of solar panels or new windows. We simply don't meter our hot water tanks. We have no idea that it can run from $200 and $300 up to $400 and $500 a year. So it's really hard to make electricity from the sun. You have to spend about 40 grand to generate maybe $1,000 of electricity. Now, tax credits and all the incentives help. We created a tax, actually a decoder, where we read the 400-page Rescue Act and shrunk it down to about a dozen pages to help people. But even after the tax incentives, you're still spending some pretty big money to get the solar panels. So a lot of these smaller, seemingly obvious initiatives go a long way. What's really funny is they called these low-flow shower heads for years. And the reality is it's the worst name you could ever think of. We've now done some consulting with companies, and we call them high performance and high efficiency and amplifying shower heads, something that's got a little gusto behind it. And they're actually designed in several different forms, not to look unlike a traditional shower head. This one on the screen happens to be approved by my mother-in-law, who was happy to see that, you know, the high tech was working to her advantage. Amazing statistics about programmable thermostats. I mean, really obvious stuff. When we go in and meet with homeowners, we're often coaching them on just how to program it. 70% of the thermostats that have programmability are not programmed by American citizens. Like, here's this great piece of technology. Imagine the millions of dollars in R&D behind it from companies like Honeywell that aren't being used. So when you're talking about payback, you know, even the most expensive ones that can run, you know, up to $110 or $15 can save you between $100 and $180 a year. Well, where in the stock market are you going to see a return like that? I mean, it's about education at the fundamental level. We never got a manual when we got the keys to run a lot of these houses. They make you take a test when you get a car and driver's license, not for the house. So part of this is just at a mass level. You know, we're working with thousands of homeowners and really pushing the content across the web, you know, nationwide. Here's the sun tube and the cross section, so you can see a little bit more of how it works. But the idea is you're reflecting the light through that tunnel, and if there are ducts or something up in the attic, you don't need to have a direct shot at the sun like a skylight. Here's one of my favorites. You know, the companies that make the window cleaner are basically delivering water. They're about 99% water, and we're really paying for the diesel fuel to transport it from the factory, and the diesel or the gasoline to go get it and move it to a Costco or buy it in our own cars. So what we found is a cleaning product that is a concentrate. You can squeeze literally a couple drops into the bottle once you've used it and fill it up with your own tap water. The bottle of, call it a Windex, might be $2 or $3. Well, there are 4 of those in a gallon at 32 ounces. That's a $10 per gallon product, as opposed to a $6 product that will generate 32 gallons. You know, so when we have these conversations, we talk about efficiency for the home itself. We talk about the water, and we talk about the air quality and what's happening in the landscape. But we also talk about operating that home, you know, doing things that might break the pattern. I never grew up in a household where mom was mixing or dad was mixing the soap with water from the tap. We got used to going to the grocery store, throwing it in the cart. There's a whole industry that makes a fortune basically putting water in single-use containers. So it's interesting that part of this exercise is changing habits, breaking the inertia, and again, thinking of home as an organism, not just an object. With the bulbs, I'll tell you, it's an amazing story. We got pitched these CFLs, the corkscrew bulbs, and I can't tell you how many people complain. They don't light up fast enough. They don't dim. Apparently, you know, the mercury now has a cost implication on the recycling that is significant. Well, when you talk about a CFL lasting 10 times as long as an incandescent, that's great. But when an LED can last 100 times as long, and it uses a fraction of the power, like an 80% savings in electricity, this is way beyond just the household. I brought as a little display one of the samples of a recessed light. What's amazing with this technology is the cost is coming down and the performance is increasing. And whether they have a lens or whether they're spotlights, they're now interchangeable with all the heat diffusing baffles with any fixture. We have a relationship with some of the manufacturers, and they are very excited to get in contact with the business and the homeowners that see the value. This bulb right here may be $1 trillion bulb. We are talking about moving hundreds of millions of these tubes that are going to have an impact on the federal deficit that is going to be so positive, because instead of borrowing money from the Chinese with T-bills and the rest of the world to fund our deficit, we can reduce hundreds of millions of dollars of cost, even from the healthcare sector, because those hospitals are running lights 24/7. This fixture, which also is shatterproof, is one of the things that the warehouses love. It's one of the things that the schools love. And so we have actually one of the relationships now through financing with several $100 million to get them in for zero cost for major facilities. And they only pay a percentage of the net energy saved. So this is a pretty exciting opportunity because it takes the whole question of efficiency to a new level. When we look at the retrofit, certainly we can do any of the bulbs given all the different sort of species that are out there. But when it comes to 80%, not 8%, right, 80, you're talking about major impact. Less impact on a home in areas like a powder room, but certainly for kitchens and playrooms and all kinds of exterior lighting, this can really start to add up. When it comes to commercial, I put this slide up just to literally give you guys a context, because we are talking about $400 billion of energy that we use annually. It was in the $250 billion just back in the 80s. We are ramping up. Despite all the conversations about savings, we are spending so much more on energy. We have more gadgets, we have more lights on. Well, when we talk about that kind of an impact, you know, it's really a pretty exciting conversation. The next big piece here is just to talk about energy auditing and the idea of a 360-degree view. When someone raises their hand to say they have an inefficient home, it's one thing to get a checkup, and it's one thing to get an energy audit, and I love the depth of the blower door. I'm, again, certified for the audits, but the reality is the ROI report has to help guide the homeowner. It's not enough to know how overweight your child may be. You got to get them to a gym. We literally have a problem with overweight houses. The ROI report is the guide, but what we did find is many homeowners do not have the energy and the tenacity to go see it through. They need someone to hold their hand. And you're going to hear from some of the group this evening about how that can be executed. But this idea of performance coordination is a complement to a lot of the things that happen with traditional auditing. When it comes to training, we are also involved with new job creation for home efficiency consultants. Back in the day, that would be before last summer, we talked more about the healthy planet. Well, now, if we can start by talking about job creation, and that leads to energy savings for homes and buildings, and it leads to higher home values, now we have a conversation with a much broader group. The byproduct of that savings can be the healthy home and can be the healthy planet if we do it correctly. With seeing and believing, showing people where they spend their energy, what the use of electricity and fuel and water looks like is not unlike the blood work that a doctor sees in order to make recommendations. When it comes to also home efficiency, we found that there's a certain sector of the culture that does not have the interest in digging deep and spending what could be $300, $400, or $500 to have someone come to their home. So for $15, we can give them the tip of the iceberg, access to all of the data, home heating indexes for their house by literally entering in something as simple as utility bills, base load electric, base water consumption, and then through the software and the things that we've developed, they're now given the recommendations with those ROI calculations. So it's about getting a big piece of the socioeconomic strata to start to learn more about how their house stands relative to their state and their federal averages. It's not unlike when you buy a car, looking at the mileage per gallon, right? We don't buy major products without knowing typically operating costs, but we do buy homes currently without looking at those costs. When it comes to how it works and the details, certainly this is all up on the website, but I just wanted to give you a taste of it this evening because what ultimately happens is the question of money comes up in the tax code and what is eligible and how do you get these 30% tax credits? Well, it turns out for windows and insulation, it's only on the material, not on the labor. So we break down the specifics. You have to have a C or 15 heat pump as opposed to a 13 or 14. You have to have a 95% or higher efficiency furnace to get the tax credit. Some Energy Star labeled products, which you would think, by virtue of being Energy Star, would be eligible, do not meet the strict criteria of the tax code. So it's pretty exciting, but at the same time, it's riddled with some potholes. All in all, we built the website, too, just for the public to be able to get their hands on it and start reading and learning and seeing examples. And I'm pleased to see the type of response that we've gotten over these last 3 years. And the net result is a new generation. This is the final slide. My dear son, then at age about 2, got involved with the construction of our home. So I'm bringing it full circle to this next generation, committed to the eco products and services that are going to save some money and the planet. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Charlie, very much. Some great information, some compelling stats. We're going to, as I mentioned earlier, hold our questions till the end of the presentation. I'm sure you all might have some specifics to that, and Charlie and myself and some of the other panelists certainly could answer those for you. So at this point, we'll move on to Josh Hilbert. And Josh, as I mentioned in the start of our presentation, we'll talk a little bit about funding possibilities. Josh.
Good evening, everybody. Let's see if I'm going to talk to everybody about funding opportunities for your green projects in your home. Of course, there are there's funding available for small businesses and large businesses, but today I'm going to focus on just residential. And there's 5 sections of my presentation. The first being federal tax credits, then Pennsylvania tax credits. Thirdly, our other Pennsylvania programs to get for grants and loans for your projects. The 4th section is related to PECO's incentives. And then the last one, if I have time, I'll give you a quick rundown of the economics of a geothermal project I just completed at my home here in Wayne. Federal tax credits are available for 30% of your green projects, up to $1,500 for the 6 different projects that I listed in the bullets. 2009 and 2010, or as far as I know right now, is the extent of this program. The windows and doors, as Charlie was mentioning, sometimes it's as simple as looking to see if the windows and doors are Energy Star rated, and other times it's not quite as simple as that, but that's definitely a first step, is to make sure that's Energy Star rated. And then after that, what you want to be doing is to going online to the Energy Star website, the tax credit page, and it's quite a useful page, and has a lot of information about how you can get your materials that you're installing at your house, how to get them to qualify for these benefits. But what I'm going to tell you about here is about how to maximize your tax credit and what the tax credit covers. And as you see, those 6 things there are you can get 30% of those costs back, and I'll tell you about the installation costs in a second. But that's capped at $1,500. That's per year, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but every year I believe you can apply for another tax credit. But I think in any one year you're capped at $1,500. Does that sound right, Charlie? Does that sound right to you?
Our data was telling us it's the one and done.
One and done, so you can't go to the next. They can't.
One and done. You can take it 1 year or the other, or you can take up to 1,500 over the 2 years. 1,500 is it.
1,500 is it. Okay, thanks for that. And, okay, here now I listed 5 different kinds of projects here where there is no upper limit. Now these projects are available to you to get a tax credit through 2016, and these projects are available for existing homes and new construction, including your second homes. Now the first projects I had mentioned were only for your existing homes and had to be your primary residence. And anytime I screw this up, guys, just please just raise your hand, and I'll happy to be corrected. Geothermal heat pumps, solar panels, both photovoltaic and hot water, solar water heaters, wind systems, and fuel cells. Now, the installation costs, you have to be very careful to make sure you know what kind of projects are covered and what kinds are not. Those first 3, heating and cooling, biomass stoves, and non-solar water heaters, your installation costs are covered up to $1,500. There is no upper limit for the bottom 4 types of projects: solar panels, solar water heaters, geothermal, wind, and fuel cells. So what that basically means is that for the bottom 4 kinds of projects, you would take the cost of the materials and the cost of the labor, i.e. the total installed cost, and you are eligible for a 30% tax credit based on that larger chunk. For the next page, I have installation costs. These kinds of projects are not covered in terms of having your installation costs paid for. These types of projects, replacement windows, replacement doors, blown-in insulation, new roofing, shingles, these only cover the materials and do not cover the installation costs. Again, I highly recommend just Googling Energy Star tax credits. First page that comes up is a very helpful page, and it explains all the different ratings that your equipment needs to get in order to qualify. Pennsylvania tax credits. In bold, I have Alternative Energy Production Tax Credit. I believe that's the name of this program. What you should do is Google that in order to get into the Pennsylvania's webpage to find a little bit more information. This tax credit may be available for 15% of the cost of your project through 2016. For existing homes only. Now, the budget is up in the air, but from what I understand, I believe that this program is not necessarily on the chopping block, but don't hold me to that. You have to be a Pennsylvania taxpayer, obviously, to be eligible. Okay, it includes solar projects, wind and hydro projects, geothermal. Okay, now these credits, these tax credits. If you're familiar with a tax credit, it's essentially the same as cash. I mean, it's real money. This is not a tax deduction. This is a tax credit. And if you have the tax basis, you can use it all in your first year. If you don't have the tax basis to use, you can spread it out over 5 years, so you can carry it forward. Oh yeah, the bottom one is important. I think this program is closed right now as of a couple weeks ago. And from what I understand from the gentleman at the state that's high up in that program, he said it will be re-upped next year and is not, again, not on the chopping block in the budgeting process. The High Performance Building Program is a Pennsylvania program designed to underwrite the cost premium associated for you to design and construct or renovate a high-performance building. Okay, the cost premium is sometimes it's easy to think of the difference between the cost to build a standard home as compared to a high-performance home. This program insists that the renovation that you're completing or the construction that you're working on, when you're done, it has to meet the LEED Gold standard. This is a building efficiency rating program that has several different levels. LEED Gold being, I believe, the second from the highest level. So in order to qualify for this grant, or I think even for the loans, you need to meet that standard. For the grant, 10% of your total eligible building construction or renovation costs are covered. So I read that to mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that means that if you are eligible for a 10% grant for the construction of your LEED Gold home, which 10%, I've often heard bandied around. Sometimes the difference in your cost to build a LEED Gold standard home and a standard home is, I've often heard people say it's about 10% more money to build that high performance building. So if I'm reading this correctly, I believe that this program will pay for that premium. The Keystone Help program is I believe it's a home efficiency loan program. I think is what it stands for. This entitles you to, if you qualify for low interest loans that are fixed, and these interest rates are typically way lower than what you can achieve, say, from a credit card. There's no penalty for prepayment. I guess what I'm going to do is I might have this slide's a little confusing. I might work my way backwards. That last bullet there explains a whole house audit. And I think I actually have an error in there right now too. That $325 cash energy audit credit actually I think got axed.
Your state legislature just took care of it.
Okay. So strike that. There's no audit credit right now. But anyway, so what the idea is that you have your home audited by a approved contractor, Keystone Help approved contractor in Pennsylvania. This approved auditor or contractor then makes recommendations for your home about how to make it more energy efficient. If you then decide to go ahead and implement their recommendations, this Keystone Help program entitles you to the low interest loans I have in that fifth bullet. So that's 3.875% to 6.375%, depending on the term of your loan. Those are outstanding rates. You cannot get them from a bank. You cannot get them from a credit card, obviously. And I believe you're going to be talking a little bit more about that, right? All right, I'll skip over that then. Pennsylvania Sunshine Solar Program. This is a very popular program, and it's doing very well from what I understand. Is designed to offset the cost of installing solar voltaic and solar hot water systems. You need to use a Pennsylvania Sunshine Solar approved installer, and it has to be at your primary residence. Sizes of the systems have to be between 1 kilowatt and 10 kilowatts. I've often heard that 4 kilowatts is a common size installed in residences. If you want to try to put numbers to this, this system pays for $2.25 per watt. Make that a kilowatt, that's $2,250 per kilowatt. Okay, so a 4 kilowatt system would achieve, I'm guessing that's about $9,000 that's a rebate. And that's usually, I've heard, is about 30% of your installed cost. And I think that's for voltaic. Now, the solar hot water rebates are capped at $2,000 per household. This slide is for incentives and rebates that come through PECO. They will give you a $300 rebate for a new high-efficiency, HE's high-efficiency gas furnace or boiler, a $50 rebate for a new high-efficiency gas hot water heater, a $200 incentive to convert your home from oil to natural gas. If you choose to install a heat pump, they'll provide I'm not sure if that's just heat. Is that just geothermal heat pumps? Or geothermal heat pump, they'll provide your installing contractor a rebate of $800. And actually, the last two bullets are they're true as of right now, and I was just informed that in a few years, the reduced electric rate that you can get will be disappearing. So that might not be as big of an incentive as I had once thought. What it is right now is that you can, after the first 600 kilowatt hours of usage in any month, your electric rate drops by 50% if you have a geothermal heat pump that you're using for heating your home. Quick touch on my geothermal project that I just completed last week. I'm so proud of. So here's some numbers. I've used quite a few of the incentives that we've just talked about, or I hope to. The 30% federal tax credit, the 15% Pennsylvania tax credit, the $800 PECO rebate to my contractor, which he then passed along to me. And as of today, I'm using my reduced electric rate for the heating season, which is between October and May. My installed cost is approximately $30,000. The tax credits and the rebates reduce that by $14,300. I hope my models show me that I can achieve $2,000 a year in energy savings. And if you assume that I did not have to do this project, that's a 7-year payback. Just you divide 2,000 into the 16,000 that it's costing me. But another way, the way that I think about it is my heating and cooling system was on its way out, and I only had a few more years left in it. And I decided to take advantage of the rebate programs that exist now. And now I have a brand new heating and cooling system. So really, if you think about it in terms of the fact that I probably had to replace my system anyway, it's an instantaneous payback, meaning as soon as I turn the system on, it has paid for itself with the help of these tax credits. And the way I've calculated that is the cost to install a standard high efficiency system. That means like an air conditioner that you're used to seeing outside with a big fan on it, and say a high efficiency natural gas furnace is going to be more than the cost that I spent on my geothermal after I put the rebates to it. A couple quick pictures for you. That's my front yard being destroyed, and that's what's called a horizontal ground loop geothermal system. The trenches have pipe at the bottom of them. There's 5 of those trenches that you can see on the left there. There's 5 of those in my yard that are connected together in a header. At the bottom of the trench is plastic pipe that's carrying my geothermal fluid through it. And on the right, you can see them putting my geothermal system together and filling the loops up with antifreeze. And on the left, you see a new water tank that they put in that captures excess heat in the summertime that the system generates. So instead of just trying to get rid of that excess heat in the ground, I actually capture it and use it to heat my domestic hot water for showers and dishwashing and that sort of stuff. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Josh. Some definitely good information there on tax credits, and I have several qualifying questions for Josh after this presentation. Okay, so next we'll hear from Rich about what's happening in the world of PECO.
Let's make sure we get the right presentation. I think it's that one, isn't it? Yes, it is. Good. Okay, thanks for having me, everybody. One of the, let me put this over to full view if I can. There we go. One of the exciting things, I think, in talking to all of you, I've never met any of the panelists here, but a lot of the things that we're talking about are all going to dovetail together, I think, which is actually a very good thing. Some of the things you're going to hear about that I'm going to talk about here from PICO on our plans around energy efficiency, our energy efficiency and conservation plans, some of the things around audits and rebates is exactly what's in our plan, which dovetails really well with what these gentlemen are doing in their own business. So I think some exciting things for some consumers to think about. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about smart metering. We're also required to put into effect a smart metering plan. So I'll talk about both of them. So that's actually what Act 129 is. Act 129 is the legislation that was passed last year by the governor, and it requires all electric companies in the state of Pennsylvania to do actually three things: file an energy efficiency and conservation plan, a smart metering plan, and then what we call a procurement plan, which is the way we go out in the future and buy energy on behalf of our customers. I'll start first with the energy efficiency plan. I'll give you an overview. As I mentioned, it was signed into law last year. It's almost a year ago now that it was put into place. There's actually three components. I've only listed two here. I'm only going to talk about two of them. As I mentioned, the energy efficiency piece, the smart meters, and I mentioned there's a procurement piece. And PICO is what we call an EDC now under the new set of rules that are out there that have been around with deregulation in the electric business. And we have about 1.5 million customers, so we're one of the come under the rules that we have to file such a plan. We actually, through a stakeholder process, working with a large group of individuals in a collaborative way, formalized a plan over about a 6 or 7 month period, and then on July 1st filed that plan with the Public Utility Commission, and actually have gone to some hearings, some questions around the plan, and actually we're slated for a final decision from the Public Utility Commission in a couple weeks here to see what our plan, what gets approved. All of it, part of it, none of it. Might have to go back for modification, so it'll be interesting to see what the Commission does on October 15th. So what is it? What are the requirements of the plan? We're actually required under legislation to actually help our customers use less energy. Kind of an interesting concept. You think, how can that be true? Well, we're required to do such. There's actually, I'll mention, if we don't, putting these plans in place, if we don't meet our targets, there's actually, as we say, there's a stick but no carrot. We actually will get penalized if we don't meet certain goals that I'll mention in a minute. But here's the numbers that give you an idea of how enormous the effort is. We have to, by mid of 2011, May of 2011, have to, through our program, try to get 394 million kilowatt hours of usage off the PICO system. And then there's another goal by May of 2013 to take 1.2 billion kilowatt hours off system. Now, on average, a customer, just to give you an idea, in a home, month in, month out, you may use anywhere from 500 to 1,500 kilowatt hours in a month, depending if you have air conditioning or not. We're talking billions of kilowatt hours that have to be removed from the system. So quite a challenge for us. In addition to that, we have to reduce what we call peak demand. Demand is what drives pricing in the energy business. Peak demand for PICO and a number of the utilities is we're summer peaking companies. There's lots of air conditioning load. That's when system peak is hit. That's when prices are the highest, supply and demand. Supply is at the lowest and demand is at the highest, prices at a premium. We're required to take 4.5% reduction off peak demand of our system in our top 100 hours. Those top 100 hours, as I mentioned, actually come in the summer months. That's equivalent of 355 megawatts. That's actually the size of a fairly medium to large size coal burning generating unit. So there are the targets that we're required to meet. What are some of the other requirements? We're allowed to spend a certain amount of money on these programs. The legislation has us capped at 2% of our revenues based on a 2006 year. What that equates to in hard dollars is almost $86 million a year for the 4 years that the program is in place. So $342 million are going to be available from PECO through incentives to try to help our customers use less electricity and reduce demand. There's actually some specific carve-outs that are required. We have to actually go after 10% reductions in what we call the government institutional sector, which covers federal, state, local governments, buildings, municipalities, schools, and nonprofits. So we actually have in our plan, you'll see a specific program for that. We also have to include measures for low-income customers. You'll see we have a plan for that. And then other rules that are set out is we have to be able to show how we're meeting these goals. So we have to put a quality assurance plan in place and what they call an M&V, a measurement and verification system, to demonstrate that we're actually meeting the goals so we can prove to the regulators that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. The plan is actually set, it has to be cost effective. There's actually a model, a cost test that's taken from California that was adopted in Pennsylvania as well. And then I mentioned what's the penalty. If we don't meet our goals, the PUC can opt to penalize us from anywhere from $1 million to $20 million. So pretty sizable stick, as I mentioned, that's at stake for PECO. Just quickly talk about a couple of the other rules. We're actually required to go out and bid out these programs, the services that we're going to provide to customers. There's a term called a conservation service provider. So we have to go out and bid out these programs, evaluate the bids, award the bids, and to the CSPs that would then manage the programs on PECO's behalf. They have to be approved and registered by the PUC. There's actually a PUC website. There's a process the vendors must follow, and they actually are listed on the PUC's website. So let's go into the plans. You may not be able to read this. Well, I'll just summarize. Here's actually the residential programs. So all of us are residential customers, right? Some of you may be businesses. I'll talk about C&I plans in a minute as well. But we have a whole tier of a suite of programs. Actually, the first one, so I heard you talking about CFLs a little bit. And I know in the coming future, LEDs even. But PECO we actually asked for early approval of this part of our plan, the CFL program, which the commission did approve a month or so ago. So we're actually getting ready now to launch a CFL initiative where we're going to, over the 4-year period, look to discount 6.5 million CFL bulbs at common retailers, so like Lowe's, Home Depot's, True Value, a whole slew of a network of retailers. And then we're going to actually, this is kind of our flagship effort to kick off the whole energy efficiency plan. We're actually going to be going out and doing a giveaway event and starting in October, giving away some bulbs. And then this actually ties to a federal initiative around CFL giveaways. So we're trying to coordinate with that. That's why we asked for the early approval. And then there's also a recycling piece to that. We know there's some concern over CFLs and the small amount of mercury that's in there. We're looking to help ensure that there is proper disposal and recycling at any of the retailers that we're working with. So that's the CFL program. I mentioned a low-income specific program because the Act required that we do that. So there's a weatherization program tied to that. There's also looking to put CFLs in homes, and then there's a weatherization partnership. You'll see here I've listed the proposed launch dates on all these. We've staggered these over time. We have 18 programs. You can't get them all out there at once. It takes some work to build them. We are starting that, and we still need final PUC approval, as I mentioned, but if everything goes as approved, they'll follow some close to these timelines. So there's a home performance plan that looks to actually, I think we mentioned about an audit. We would look to, customer would pay the audit up front. You'd actually, as a result of that audit, get some low-cost measures that should be the equivalent of the $300. You'd get a report, like was mentioned, and actually, if you go ahead and act on those measures, we'd actually be looking to actually refund you if you go ahead and act on the plan, the actual audit investment that you made. There's a home energy incentive. There's actually 21 different Energy Star type products that if you put high efficiency appliances into your home, there's actually a whole listing of different rebates that you would get from PECO, as long as you have proof that you've bought the appliance, installed the appliance in your home. There'd be a rebate form. You'd submit that form with proof to us, and you'd get a rebate incentive from us. There's also then around new construction, so to some builders, there's some incentives there for using Energy Star standards. We're actually going to throw some money in as well for some education and outreach for builders to use to promote the high efficiency products. An appliance pickup program, pretty interesting. So if you have the old keganator sitting around, as they call it in the basement, the old refrigerator you want to get rid of, we realize there's the issue of refrigerant concerns. We actually are working with a vendor that we're looking to hire that would actually come out, pick up that appliance from you, take it away, and do proper remediation of that old appliance, old refrigerator. And this, as it lists here, it would cover a refrigerator, a freezer, and a room air conditioner. The only caveat is there has to be a working unit. It can't be one that's dead that you're sitting there that you just want to get rid of. It would have had to been actually in a working unit, and they would actually verify that. And then last on this page, a direct load control program. Several utilities already have these in place. Really what that's doing is putting a control switch on your central air conditioning unit and or electric water heater, and you would actually get an incentive in your bill from PECO in the summer months. The water heater, I believe, is $12 a month for the 4 summer months. So that's $48 a month to let us actually cycle your water heater off, and then air conditioning unit, I believe it's $30 a month for this, or $30 or $40 a month for the 4 summer months. That would allow us to cycle your unit on for 15 minutes in a hour time period and cycle to try to actually reduce that peak demand requirement that I was talking about. And then to finish out on residential programs, there's a new rate offering we're going to be having out there in 2011. It's called a super peak time of use rate, kind of a funny name. But what that actually looks to do is in a very narrow band of time frame from somewhere in 2 p.m. to 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. when in the summer when it's the hottest and prices are usually the highest, you would actually be charged a very high rate. So it would be an encouragement not to run equipment in that time period. But then in all your off-peak periods, you would actually get a much lower rate. So it's a trade-off. Interesting to see, what your lifestyle is. It may fit some people or not. And again, all these programs are actually voluntary. So we actually have the requirement to reach these goals, but all these programs are voluntary. So it's an interesting challenge that PECO is facing. And then finally, a renewable resource. We saw some pictures of renewable resources. We actually have a rebate. Now, I've listed a pricing here, and that's actually a wrong number. That's the entire cost of that program. Actually, I meant to list just the incentives. We're going to be offering up to $2.3 million of incentives, and I think for us, it's going to be $1.50 a kW. You mentioned the government rebates that you were talking about. There'll be from PECO an incentive for folks that put photovoltaic and hot water systems in of $1.50 per watt. And then there's some education as well to businesses that we're going to be offering in incentives as well. So that's actually the residential. Commercial, I'm not going to go into too much detail in here, but there's some similar plans, the idea of high efficiency equipment, new construction rebates. There's a direct load control for commercial industrial customers as well. There's a super peak time of use rate as well. So you can see they mimic And then there's some of these last programs are, again, really trying to go after this peak demand reduction, where PECO would offer some incentives for cleaning up dirty old backup generators and actually getting customers to clean them up and run them during peak periods as needed to reduce system peak. And then at some what we call aggregation, where we'd go out with I mentioned a curtailment service provider, not to be confused with the conservation service providers, look to sign up large customers and get them to actually interrupt load during peak periods. And again, incentives would be to offer there. I've listed here a number of the incentives that are part of these programs. And then lastly, I mentioned there's a carve out for the government, public nonprofit. So that really mimics a lot of what I was talking about, incentives for replacing inefficient cooling and other appliances with high efficiency. And then since we're talking about municipal and government, there's also, they own traffic lights and street lights. We'd look to be providing incentives to go to LED high efficiency type lighting. And then actually this is listed twice. The Renewable Resource Program is actually a program that applies both to C&I customers, the commercial industrial customers, and residentials. And then finally, there's a conservation voltage reduction program. This was interesting, and it would actually allow PECO to tune its distribution system so that there's a better, efficient use by all of us. Very interesting that we have out there as well. So that's just real quick to summarize the 18 programs that are out there. I'm then going to go over to, real quickly, our smart metering plan that we required to file. So a lot of people ask, what's a smart meter? And you'll see, if you can see the picture here, there's a couple standing over a meter, and the meter is spouting back some smart information back to them. I don't know if smart meters are really going to be smart enough to know the capital of South Dakota, but the idea is really knowledge. Smart metering really is talking about technology and the transfer of knowledge and having a communication network and what value that is to us as consumers. Here's what it is in terms of broadscape. There's also a term smart grid. Smart grid means the whole electric system. And you can see here that's in the darker blue is the smart metering part of that. And what's really saying is, how can you build with technology? How can you make power plants run more efficiently? How can you make our distribution system, how we move energy across the network, knowing about outages, knowing about loads changing at any given time? How can we take that knowledge and use energy more efficiently? And as you can see, as we move in to the left, you're getting closer into the home. You now have the smart meter that would be at your home that would actually provide you a couple things. The knowledge around how you're using energy, also what the prices are at any given time, so you can make a intelligent decision on, do I want to look to run that washer cycle or dishwasher later because it's going to be cheaper, or do I want to run it now during the day? So the idea of having more knowledge around that. So let's go on. Let me go on to the next page and you can see a little more. And let's just talk quickly about the Act itself. Again, the requirements that PECO had. Act 129 obligates PECO to actually offer this technology to our customers, to you. It says that we have 3 requirements around that. If you request it, so I think somebody in the room here was saying they wanted to volunteer, there you are. So if you were to request it, and I'll talk a little bit about that more. And then in any new building going in, new building construction, it's going to become the standard. So we're going to have to start putting it in new construction. And then we have, in accordance, it says, with a 15-year schedule, basically. We're allowed to do it over 15 years. We actually filed a plan that asked to accelerate that some. We actually applied for stimulus money, and if we get the stimulus approval, we're going to look to try to do that in, I believe, less than a 10-year time frame if we can. So smart metering technologies, I mentioned a little bit. Here are the words that are in the Act. It says a network that's capable of bidirectional communication. So a meter that can talk back and forth to you and to other computers, the transfer of knowledge. It also says you have to be able to record that on an hourly basis. So you want to be able to have enough data to make conscious, smart decisions on. Has to be able to enable time of use rates and real-time pricing. So the idea of knowledge is power. You're going to know what prices are out in the market. You can make a conscious buying decision on how you want to use energy. And then I mentioned a little bit, supports automatic control. So for example, the direct load control that I was mentioning to you is one of those. But in addition to that, it could also be to assist in controlling other appliances in your house. You might be at work and you may be able to right through the internet say, oh, prices are low, I want to run that laundry. Right from your computer, start the washer up. That's some of the Star Trek sort of things that might be coming down the road. Now, none of this comes free. We're required to file a plan, and then we're allowed to recover those costs. And the words talk here about provides full and current cost recovery of all prudent and reasonable costs. That's the lawyer speak, the regulations that talk about that. One of the things we have to do, though, is it has to be netted against any operating and capital cost savings that we see. So if we see benefits in our business from this, we have to net that against the cost, and that's actually factored in our plan that we actually filed. And this plan was actually filed about 6 weeks after the energy efficiency plan. It was filed in mid-August, so it's in front of the PUC. And actually, here are the time frames that I mentioned. We just filed this plan 6 weeks ago or so. The regulatory process is a slow process. And we're looking that probably the plan is anticipated that it would be approved somewhere in the April timeframe of next year, and that our first deployment would be probably somewhere in October of 2011. To be able to actually build a network, to be able to offer smart metering, is you have to build a communications network, you have to build a computer network to be able to hold the massive data that these meters are going to collect. So our plan is to go out and bid out the technology. We haven't selected the technology at this point. We're going to look to see what the options are out in the market, bid that out, and then from there, we're going to look to deploy internal systems, as I mentioned. We have to look to deploy to be able to coordinate with the metering. We have to build the communication network, which will basically be could be a fiber optic network, could be a radio frequency type network. So there's different technologies that are being looked at. And then from that, we'll be looking to develop some of these time of use and real-time rates that I was talking about that would be available to all of our customers. So here's just give you an idea of what some of the things that may be available to folks in the future. The idea of advanced rates I mentioned, a home area network where you may be able to control different appliances in your house, in-home displays and web access to turn equipment on and off. So we are also in the gas business, so you may be able to do some of these things on the gas side of the business as well. Mentioned direct load controlling type devices, and there's the smart meter. So that gives you just a quick idea of what may be on the residential side. Commercial, some similar things. For commercial, there may be some additional large lighting control, air conditioning and heating control, and some other web access and other measures. So that was just real quickly a look at the commercial side. And then here's some of the devices I was mentioning. Some of these are actually, a lot of these are real today. They exist today in various stages of pilots. And the idea of having displays that would actually show you the pricing. You can make a pricing decision based on the display. Controllable thermostats that either Pico could control, or you could control as well. You could actually override if you're deciding, well, the deal that I was in, I want to override today. You could do that. And then I mentioned the direct load control. That's basically, that box there is a controlling switch that would actually control certain appliances to turn them on and off in exchange for actually giving folks incentives. That's real quick. A summary of energy efficiency and smart metering. You just got it in the real compressed fashion, so I know we'll get some questions a little later, and I look forward to trying to help you understand where we're headed in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Some of that stuff sounds a little space age to me. I don't know about that, but all good things. Okay, so our last presenter, Sean Crane of Hometown Green, is going to talk a little bit about energy auditing and some other topics as well.
Thank you, Mark. Let's see how much of I'm a technophobe. Let's see how I do. I think we're going to end the show. Do you know where he has these, Mark? Are they on the desktop? Okay.
He knows where it is up there, too.
Okay. There's a little color on the screen. What is all that nonsense down there? These are the people we hang out with. And if you go to our website, you'll see the words, the company we keep makes us the company you choose. And the reason we did that was because in our marketing search, what we found when people were talking about green and talking about wanting to work on their house or do things to their house was that 77% of all home purchases over $1,000, the final decision is made by a woman. And 92% of all the women who make that purchase of a home improvement decision of $1,000 or more have been burnt for $1,000 or more during the course of making their decisions. This means that people feel they haven't gotten value in the home improvement realm. And we wanted to be very clear to people where we stood about delivering value. And as a result, we take a very global approach. Our business began on the bench of a Quaker meeting house in North Carolina. And it's continued its journey for 3.5 years. My partner Kim and I work, and we have now 8 employees, and we do home energy auditing, and we send people out every day, secondary to the audits, to go out and actually make the improvements to homes that are according to a very rigid prescription that one of our auditors will offer up to the homeowner. So our process is a little bit formal. It's very it takes a lot of time, it's painstaking, and the results, we believe, are pretty much close, second to none. I'd like to thank, before I go on tonight, Mark and Robin Mann for inviting me here, and the folks in Radnor Township for having a sustainability series, for actually getting this underway. And also, someone who's not here tonight but has been very important in our journey has been Chandler Von Schrader, who is the EPA's representative for this part of, Energy Star rep for this part of the state, and also our guys who are out in the trucks every day killing carbon. And to Kim, too, because she helped me get the presentation put together. So tonight we're going to look at auditing, and at the bottom line, auditing has a financial implication. Over a period of time, every home is going to cost its owner for energy. And so before we make any kind of recommendations, before we dig down and burrow down and disaggregate the bills and figure out how much hot water it went to hot water and how much went to air conditioning, we take a bigger picture look. And the bigger picture look can be a little bit scary. But we start by asking the client how much they think that Rick and the gang are going to ask for their next rate increase. And so some clients will tell us they think rates are going to go up 4% per year on average. Some say 6, some say 10, some are doomsdayers and say 30. And when we do, we break out this timeline. You'll see the top left-hand numerical box is $5,489. Those are the annual bills of a client that Rob signed today. This is a project that we're going to begin in 2 weeks. If you look, I predicted for this client 4% per year annual increase. The client chose 12%. And as we move along the timeline, by 2014, his bills are up to 66. Well, you say that's not too bad. And then by 2020, they're up to 84.50. You say, well, that's not too bad. And look at that. Look what he spent by 2025. He has a 6-year-old he wants to put through college, and when that 6-year-old is 21 years old, he will have spent $130,000 for Rich and the gang. And I don't bemoan Rich his living, but is all of that necessary? Does a family of 4 living in 4,200 square feet really need that kind of energy use? And the answer is no. And some of the steps that Charlie talked about, our business started much like Charlie's did. We started with the green rehab of a home. and we learned our lessons. And we took some hard knocks. And last March, our utility bill was 168 kilowatts for the entire month of March. And that may sound like a lot or a little, or it may not make sense to many of you, but in PICO terms, it's about $26. Plus the monthly fee, of course. We can't deny them their monthly fee. But when you think about it, the house has no renewable energy on it. None. It's standard technology applied intelligently. And it's slimming down, and it's my grandmother, Mima. Mima lived in Haverford Road, and in the summers, I used to stay there, and in the winter sometimes too. And when you come to her kitchen at 6:30 in the morning in the winter, she would be there in her slippers and a house coat, and there would be a pot of water on the stove boiling, just a low boil. And I would tell her, Mima, what do you have the pot of water on for? And she'd laugh and she'd say, it's cheaper than turning on the Blue Monster. The Blue Monster was the boiler in the basement. And she knew she could keep the kitchen door closed and a little pot of water on. She could conserve and she could save. And so I honestly come by a cheapskate, skinflint, energy auditor, how can we kill the next kilowatt BTU hour sort of perspective in life. And as I carried that through engineering in college, and as I've moved along in this, we've learned ways to conserve without spending big bucks. And it can be done. So what is the context for that $130,000 investment Brian wants to make? Some of these things have been talked about here. These are the things that have been happening in our energy market. October 2008 ended it, really kind of for 2008. First, we had House Bill 2200 become Act 129 last October, and then the Senate passed the big bill last October, which allowed some of the credits that Josh was talking about. Excuse me? And what else was going on for this client who's going to spend $130,000 in his next 15 years of energy purchases? Act 129, Rich just got through talking about. Our economic picture worsened. I got from our solar distributor, I got emails showing pictures of solar panels falling out of the sky, saying it's raining solar panels because panel prices dropped so low last January and February. I wish I had enough installs to go with all the emails of people trying to sell me solar panels. So in February, the stimulus plan began to hit the streets. And if you look, the last item here is that March 2009 interest rates are so low, they make the return on investment of investing in your home higher than any common equity investment that you can buy in the market. And we're going to talk for a second about that. For the client is looking at this picture. This is what the client has to choose from in the auditing market in the state of Pennsylvania. You can go with an organization that we belong to, which is called PA Home Energy. They require all their auditors to be ResNet and BPI certified, and they also require those auditors to use a prescribed protocol called HIPWIS, or Home Performance with Energy Star. That protocol demands that I come into your home, that I measure every door, window, floor, ceiling, wall, and I enter them into a computer and build a model of your home. And at the same time that I do a statistical analysis of your present bills. And I match your bills to that computer model to see that I built the correct model of the home. And when I'm done, I have a statistical predictive model that can tell me within 2% accuracy whether or not when you replace a door or fix a heater or change it to a geothermal system, what the payout will be on that. The model is deathly accurate. The system works. Energy Star spent a long time putting it together. The back end of the program is when I'm done delivering your audit, they take 1 out of every 10 audits that I do and they check them. And then when I tell you to go and make the performance check, they check your house and the performance work that was done to see that that work was done correctly. And then when they're done that, they monitor your utility bills for the next 5 years to see how effective I am and to grade me at how well I do what I do. And so the higher up, the better I am at what I do, the more reward there is for me within that organization. So our business belongs to this organization. There are about now 85 providers across the state of Pennsylvania who belong to PA Home Energy, and they all enjoy relationships with high-quality contractors who have been vetted. And There are people out there who will try to sell you what they pull as a high-quality audit and charge you good money for a high-quality money, and they will not have the credentials. The credentials will wind up making it so that you may not be able to collect tax credits. Credentialing issues could make it so that you wind up disqualified from participating in state loan programs. The state DEP in general is monitoring solar programs to make sure that there's a high quality of contractors. We had to file an application that was lengthy, and as do other providers, and they're checked and vetted to make sure that they know what they're doing. So Keystone Help monitors HVAC programs, and those programs check also auditors, geothermal, and wind people. If you do go through the Keystone program, they will check out your contractor. My last recommendation on this sheet is home performance with Energy Star. Rules are firm, and if you have a $130,000 investment at risk, do not spend $100 on an audit. Don't spend $50 on a checkup. Spend $500 to $1,000 on a quality financial investment predictive tool. Good research will show that precursors to efficiency, this is MEMA stuff here, conservation, reduce, reuse, and recycle. They're important. They're linchpins in the recommendations that we give people. We want them to engage in these practices before we start selling them or telling them that they need insulation or air conditioners, geothermal, or any of the good of it. Efficiency is about life cycle costs. The length of time that an improvement is going to be made has to be figured into the picture, and we're going to show you that in just a second. We advocate starting with a home performance with Energy Star audit. We advocate looking at a house as a system approach. You can't look at one piece. People will come up to me after something like this and say, should I install a demand hot water heater? I can't tell you because a crew of 2 people spends an average of 5.5 hours in a house before it takes us 3 weeks to generate a report that's valid and good. So we look at the whole system. Computer modeling makes sure that when you get an audit and that you're being sold an improvement, that you know within a predictive amount of accuracy what the payoff will be for that. Is it a good financial decision? This computer modeling is a good predictive tool that can help you. It also ensures that your tax credits are legitimate and ensures predictable, sound results and a good investment. Let's talk about Brian for a second. There's a HERS certificate. A HERS certificate is a Home Energy Rating System certificate. The Waxman-Markey bill presently in Congress right now will require that every home sold by the end of 2013 has to have a HERS number. And a HERS number means that your home is rated, your home is compared, your home is held up. So if you're going to keep your home for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, it doesn't much matter. You're going to need a HERS score. And that means that your home is going to be competing among other homes with a nationally recognized system for people being able to know whether one house is more efficient or desirable than another. Good research will show that the first thing is before you buy any equipment, there are pre-equipment processes. Air sealing comes before insulation, and air sealing must be done by BPI certified personnel with appropriate equipment. We insulate after air sealing. We use low VOC, low embodied energy, so that we don't wind up spending 10 million BTUs to save 4 of them. It doesn't make sense. House relationships with the sun, wind, rain, snow, topography, vegetation, and people can all be modified, and we examine them all. You get a report, you get a heliodyne report, you get an understanding of how your house relates to the sun. Water flow, controls, sinks, and showers. I think everybody pretty much has talked about this tonight. It's an important deal. It's an important deal because your water company's paying to pump all that to you, and it shows up in that aqua bill every month. Equipment, Energy Star only for credits, and as was brought up earlier, there's some Energy Star equipment that does not wash. EnergyStar.gov, front page, bottom left-hand corner, 1040 IRS symbol. Click it, it'll take you to every eligible piece of equipment there is. If somebody's trying to sell you something, it's there. Install appliances and CFL LED daylighting and solar tubes. Much like Charlie said, we believe in borrowed light, which means using light from another area. We have the duplex we use. We also use translucent bathroom doors that were right adjacent to windows in a hallway, and there was no, the bathrooms were landlocked, and you don't need to turn on a light when you go into it during the day. Use renewables or high efficiency for HVAC and hot water. And these choices all get related to that $130,000 in a second here. Use renewables to produce power and reduce your needs. Since it's supper time, let's talk about a piece of pie. This is Brian's pie, that $5,489 a year. This is how he spends his energy. He also puts out 21.8 tons of carbon dioxide into the air every year just for his home. Never mind the Yukon in the driveway. We reduced the home shell need for energy modestly, $700 a year, not a real big deal, not a real big energy undertaking, but he's dropped 3 tons of weight. Charlie was talking about our houses being overweight. Then we took him on a lighting and appliance diet. We chucked that old top load washer. We got him a high efficiency washer. We got him an Energy Star 2010 refrigerator in the plan. He's got some LED lighting and some CFL lighting, and he's really psyched. He really wants to do this. And we took, if you look at his lighting and appliance bill, that's a really modest reduction. It was $2,100. We took him down to $1,450. Mine, by contrast, for the year is about what he pays for a month. Annual cost after a dual fuel heat pump was installed. We offered him the opportunity to go with solar heating, and he decided that he wanted a little bit more of that $130,000 than Pico was getting. And we'll show you how and why. Then we stuck him with either a tankless or a solar hot water is usually the next choice for a client, and it got him down to $2,673 from his $5,489. Well, how low can he go? Let's see. Actually, it's so low that it no longer is pi because it has a negative in it, and REM rate spits out. We got Brian down 15.8 tons of carbon a year, and we got him down to $1,253 a year from a $5,400 bill, but that's really a lie. His bill was really $6,800, and all of this took place after we took $1,400 off of his bill by putting solar hot water heating on his pool. So he went from $6,800. Let's go back to the timeline. Now we've got Brian's $1,253 on the timeline. And we got his original $5,489. Let's follow it for 5 more years. Look at the difference. Look at 2020. There's a 4-to-1 ratio between the two. Let's look at the end. Brian's got $100,000 in his pocket. How about that? Let's see how much of it he spent. Shell efficiency cost $10K, lighting and appliances $3K, dual fuel heat pump $11K, $7K in solar, $7K in solar H2O. And the total, I didn't put $7K out there, but it is added in. The total is $87,000. But it didn't come out of his pocket. $70,200 after the solar tax credit. You keep on going down the line. $48,000, $550. That's better than a good day at shopping at Sims. So you know he got a heck of a discount here. He got $87,000 worth of stuff for $48,550. Not a bad deal. Let's look at the ROI. $4,236 a year in income difference between the $54,000 and the $1,200 on a $48,000 investment, and that money is all still in his house. It hasn't gone anywhere, and that house is going to compete far better than the $5,400 house next door when his son's through college, and it's time for he and Faith to move. So if you look, he has got an 8.7% return on investment and cheated Rick and the gang out of $100,000. How do I pay for all this? Well, call Josh. But how do you pay for all of it? Loan payment plus the new bills is less than the old bill payment. And that's true for this house. Pretty simple. Your loan payment and your new utility bill is less than your old bill, so you need a little capital. Utility increases in future increase property values if you're using efficiency or renewables. What all that means is the more that the PICO rates do go up after the caps come off, the more valuable this property and this investment become. Zero down payment. Oop, I need to go back. Zero down payment, subsidized loans as low as 3.875%. Keystone Help will subsidize you, will help you pay. They even have a neat thing. If you're overextended in your home or your home is decreased in value to the point where you're upside down a little bit, they'll give you 120% loan to value. What the state wants to do is they want to encourage people not to have an energy bankruptcy. We've talked a lot and heard a lot in the news and little sound bites about all kinds of bankruptcies associated with improper lending. The truth is that a lot of the lending in Nevada and California and Arizona that's been highlighted have not been the only criminals in those bankruptcies. They've been skyrocketing rates and people who are unprepared as first-time home buyers to pay them. And so what we've seen is that the state of Nevada and the state of Arizona and New Mexico all require a HERS score. They want you to intelligently buy before you buy that house. Allegedly, you don't need money in Pennsylvania. For efficiency improvements, let me underscore that. Keystone Help will not finance solar because the state's already supporting it in other ways. These are the 3 levels of contractors in the Keystone Help program. I am the bottom one. There are probably 40 of us now in the state. Secured loans, and they also give you unsecured loans. The unsecured loans are pretty liberal. They're pretty liberal terms, and KeystoneHelp.org will help you. So how do you make the right choice? How do you go about figuring out how to do efficiency for your home? Look for claims of membership in valid organizations. Call them. Call the organizations. But boy, when you call BPI to find out who I am, God bless you. That's going to be a ride. It's a very hard organization to get information about. They're trying to protect me, they say. Ask for references. We have a standing list of client references for solar jobs, geo jobs, efficiency jobs, solar hot water, you name it, we got it. And anybody who's been practicing for a while should have it. Ask for insurance certificates. And July 1st, Consumer Protection Act of 2008 requires, as of July 1st, that all contractors in the state have a contractor number. So you should get that number from your contractor and call the magic 1-800 number and make sure it's still good. Make sure he still has his certificate. I was in court today testifying for somebody who's not going to have his state license anymore. To keep from making a large mistake, check out the neighborhood your people are hanging with. Who is certifying them? Who have they been trained by? Who do they know? What other professionals in similar fields do they know? And then start talking to neighbors. We don't advertise. We have people constantly telling us they want to improve our website. We don't want to improve our website. I have more phone traffic than I know what to do with. And usually a better mousetrap, that's the way it works. And there are plenty of great practitioners out there. And there are lots of folks still learning and cutting their teeth. And you're going to have to just choose wisely and figure out if somebody has your best financial interests at heart. This presentation will be on our website tomorrow, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. And this list, along with other lists of resources, will be there if any of you need them. And I think that's about it for me for tonight.
Thank you, Sean. All right, well, that concludes our presenter part of the evening. And now I open up to our audience here if there are any specific questions for our panelists. So that being said, I have a couple questions, but any?
What's the cost range for an audit?
I've seen an audit go.
Mark, you're going to need to have the guys repeat the message. Oh, we got a portable mic.
Are we live? We are? Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
And for you
Right.
guys up there, there's a button you have to hit to make your mic go on.
Yeah. Okay. So the question was from the audience, what is the cost range of performing an energy audit?
In the state of New Jersey, there used to be a mandated $125 per audit fee. That lasted about 3.8 seconds. Our audits range from $500 up to, you name it. Typical 2,500 square foot house is $500. 3,500 square foot house is $6.25. And we're my confusion is rooted in the fact that we're changing our price list effective today, where our prices are going up. And a 5,000 square foot house is around $750. We charge extras that does not include a solar site assessment. I do basically a primitive heliodyne on each house, but it does not include a solar site assessment. A solar site assessment is necessary in the state of Pennsylvania with a formal instrument study of the roof or the area to be solar, where the insolation is sunlight, where the insolation is going to be used to quantify for the state that they're actually investing in a valid system. So generally speaking, our average audit is probably around $750, and our average house size is somewhere around 6,200 square feet. Bigger people with bigger houses are coming to us for the kind of makeover that you saw.
Are there any incentives to volunteer to have a smart meter put on your home? And how do they relate? Like right now, we're a member of the energy cooperative, so we buy renewable energy. Will that affect that as well?
So to your first question, well, let me go to your second about being part of coop. There's no difference, I think, in that. And I'm sorry, your first part was
Incentives to smart meter. Do we
oh yeah,
volunteer?
So as part of the plan that I mentioned, if it's approved, we're actually going to look to, we're not going to put 1.5 million meters out there. It doesn't happen overnight. We actually currently have an automated meters reading system, kind of a semi-smart system out there that we've seen a lot of benefits. It took us 3 years to do that. The plan that, as proposed, we would actually go out with, I think it's about 600,000 meters under a kind of a pilot to make sure the technology works. But there is no specific incentive tied with that. Depending on how we deploy and those that volunteer, you would be basically, guinea pigs, right?
I have a loud voice. LED lighting. LED lighting, things that are attractive that you could use in your kitchen or dining area. Are they available commercially now? And if not, when do you predict they will be?
Thanks for asking. It's a pretty exciting industry because we've had this technology since the 1920s. What we have had is a challenge with the drivers. So, for example, the tube that I held up is now built with a team that we have actually overseas as well as domestic that has an internal driver as well as externals. What I showed with the hi-hat is a baffle system that reduces the heat. We actually have one of the only dimmable ones in the United States now, and so what you'll find is you are at 10 times the efficiency of a CFL, but pretty close to 10 times the cost. So the challenge is not the availability. We have them for sale at commercial levels for residential and office use as well as institutions. But when you're talking about a 30-cent incandescent bulb, a $3 compact fluorescent, and a $30 LED, you'll be taking those bulbs that last 40 to 80,000 hours with you when you leave that house. I mean, that's how real of an investment it is. People always ask, Charlie, are the prices going to come way down? The reality with the chip production, I mean, it is technology, it is solid state technology, is we're not going to see some incredible fall in cost because until the demand is truly massive, it is expensive to produce, not unlike solar panels. But what you do have is about a 2-year payback. So in a typical office environment, call it the 2-foot by 4-foot panel with 3 or 4 bulbs is going to cost about $100 to operate a year. When you have 2 years and you're $200 into it and you can save about 180 of that with literally the LEDs, you don't mind spending $30 to $60 per bulb. So the math does work. The problem is cash flow, and it's why with the financing for commercial we've got to jump. We can't help the homeowners that are buying several $100s of bulbs, but you can take the lead as we did with our own house and be a little bit of a pioneer out there. Through Green and Save, we can get you going if you want to come poke around the site.
Our experience with them has been mixed. We started at Lightfair International when it was at Jacob Javits, I think the time before this passed. And Lightfair International is a place where all the big manufacturers, Lutron, Leviton, Phillips, Sylvania, they all gather, and it's a great place to go for seminars and workshops and figure out what's going on. What we are seeing is true inability across the industry, whether it's in CFLs or in LEDs, to adequately and properly control color levels. We see within one package of 5 bulbs, and Consumer Reports did a great piece on CFLs, I believe it was in June or July. We see an inability for them to control color. Within one package of 5 bulbs, we see a range of 150 to 250 Kelvin, which to you, your eye can pick up. So when you're putting them into a ceiling like this, for example, it doesn't matter much. They're way up high. But when they're down in a more intimate area, like in your home where it's 8-foot or 7.5-foot ceilings in a kitchen, it shows. And I appreciate when you said attractive or good looking at it. I forget what your words were. We've struggled with it in our home, but we have found that LEDs are valuable. I have them in the attic. When you go into the attic and turn on the light, it's an LED. It doesn't get used much. By the front door, we have a duplex. We're required to keep on a light all the time. It's LED. The exterior lights beside the door, where LEDs are great for outdoors, much more suitable than CFLs, which are slow to start. So we pick and choose our places. But for really accurate color rendering in an environment where aesthetics are really a sensitive issue, I haven't seen it happen yet. That's my take on it. One of the greatest lighting resources around is very close to the Delaware Valley. Lutron Industries has up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, an incredible lighting museum where you can go and see smart home technology, and you can see just about every bulb, dimmer control, occupancy sensor, fixture that you would want to see.
Any other questions? I have a quick question for you guys. We heard tonight about a lot of incentives from the state, from the feds, from PICO, various grants and so forth. How do the layperson keep their arms around this and utilize it? A lot of great stuff cumulatively together makes it really a good deal to do some of these improvements that were mentioned tonight. But, speak to my accountant. He knows some of them, but not really more than 20% of these incentives. So cumulatively, it's great stuff, but it's hard to locate all this stuff. Is there a clearinghouse or anything like that for all these wonderful programs? You talked about 3 of them tonight, state, federal, PICO. There wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple more out there. Is there such a tool?
There's a gal here in Paoli who's a lawyer who came up to this area from D.C. about 2 years ago and started a small practice. And Molly Duffy, the name of her practice fails me, but she actually guides some people who are going through big makeover processes or lead processes, help accumulate, keep track of their points and their scores and their credits and what they're eligible for and what they're not.
I'll jump in too. We have with 40 different writers and researchers now in all the states a program, since we're the partner with the National Association of Realtors, to actually be something of a watchdog group to help the end user see what they possibly will have missed. So it's an amazing challenge to keep track in every different state. But through the newsletters and the resources like the green, decoders, we're on it every month. The reality is some pending legislation, as simple as the smart meter here in Pennsylvania was initially passed by the state house, but then the Senate did not pass it, and PICO got involved with the conservation initiatives and the incentives. So, it is a moving target to a massive degree. But the good news is, with the type of in-home services that Sean offers and some of our team provides, you do have a live body in those specific communities that is up to speed on their pocket of the world. So it's hard to get a global picture because it's so agile. But the reality is, as those things change, we have advised homeowners not to go and buy the things that 6 months ago would have been on the recommendation, because that may be a 6-month hold until the incentive comes back into place. Literally, with the heat pumps, there was a brief, I think it was a 3-month period where we were saying, hold off till, the fall, because why spend the money now? They were in the middle of the summer thinking they were going to do the retrofit, but the money wasn't there from PICO or from the state. So it's a little tricky, but at least there's some real reasons to keep track of it, because it's big money when it adds up to tens of thousands of homeowners.
Sure, it sounds like it reinforces using certified, knowledgeable guys, as Sean really emphasized for us. Another question I have is, one of the common requests that I hear is re-insulating the old houses, especially that we have here in Radnor Township. And the tax credit, this $1,500 tax credit, tie that into the percentages. You know, an average house might have a re-insulation that's $1,500 to $2,000, and maybe an energy audit in there of $500 or $600, so you have an expensive $2,000 to $3,000. What's the breakdown for that tax credit, that $1,500? Is it percentage, or can you knock $1,500 off of that $3,000 expense?
Our average ticket for a 5,000 square foot shell is somewhere between $8,500 and $11,000. I don't know what the figure is this quarter. What does that buy you? To be able to blow low embodied energy insulation into a home means that you have to remove any chance of moisture infestation in that home. It means the gutters, downspouts, the topography all have to be aligned. It's serious work. I can't put a product which could conceivably make you sick into your home. It's part of my ethical obligation to you as a BPI professional. That means that I first eliminate radon, second, moisture, third, make sure there's no asbestos, fourth, make sure that there's no chance of carbon monoxide poisoning. Once I've ensured you have indoor air quality, then I seal the house. There are limits, and those limits have to be addressed, and they take time. It takes time to turn on the blower door and have a crew of 2 or 3 guys wander around the house with instruments and figure out exactly where all the leaks are coming from, and then to stop them in an effective way that somebody can live with that's aesthetically pleasing. Once that is done, once a house has reached baseline air standard, then it can be insulated. Typically, we see a cost of between 75 cents and $1 a square foot to properly air seal a home. And then beyond that, we see adding insulation to a home isn't something you just do, because when I go into a home, I have to peel back all the insulation in the attic. I can't leave the old insulation there without first seeing the plane of the attic. It's an involved operation to intelligently seal a home and then insulate it so that it has a lasting value. That cost, that $8,500 to a $10,000 cost, might also include adding bathroom fans to a home, because humidity has no place in a home where cellulose insulation is used. And we prefer to use it because it's the most environmentally friendly insulation there is.
I want to reiterate that too and say Sean is dead right with this. When there's a penetration from a vent stack going through an attic, people rarely look at the point where that penetrates the thermal boundary. What that simply means is the DIY community that is buying at the big box stores this weekend, the rollout bad insulation, is in jeopardy of actually creating real moisture issues and damaging their house more than the advantage of the energy savings. So we've built this culture of accessibility with a lot of the products, but not a base of building science knowledge. And so the combustion safety and all the issues that come up are very real. We've heard about sick building syndrome. The reality with homes is we have to be careful, and we have to do the extra work to look at all those places, because even something as simple as a soffit vent, if it is blocked by the home improver and there's not adequate ventilation, you're going to have moisture buildup. They're going to have tens of thousands of dollars of potential damage when they go and sell that house and have a home inspector come poke around. So, I mean, it's interesting, in this surge of interest for the new green efficiency, we've opened up some doors to learn that as a culture, we actually did a poor job in the last 3 decades, really 4 even, since the war in the 60s, of building new homes. And a lot of primitive cultures, as crazy as it sounds, I've lived and worked in Asia and Eastern Europe and Africa, were smarter about understanding natural ventilation and systems. So it is kind of a takeaway here, which is leave it to the pros when it comes to the big elements. You know, painting the rooms and doing the things and fixing the railings on the decks are all fine and good. Putting in a smart shower head that I talked about early, God bless you, go for it. The faucet aerators, all those things. But when it comes to the thermal boundary and the bigger issues, you know, that's a leave it to the pros.
Okay, any other questions tonight? Okay, Kim?
Charlie, this is a kind of personal. You mentioned that you have a a tankless that supplements your solar hot water, because you do solar hot water heat, and I'm really curious because we're looking at it. How often does your tankless have to supplement your?
This is great. People ask all the time, and I do a lot of tours of the house. So all summer and for most of the spring and the fall, we have over 120 degrees in the tank. So that is a terrific opportunity because you need, about 120 to comfortably take a shower at the highest heat, and you need it certainly for the dishwasher, to kill any of the bacteria. If it drops below 120, the on-demand system will fire. So it is basically running just as a conduit. It is flushing through the water if it's already hot enough. In the winter, we may only reach 80 to 90 degrees on a bright sunny day. And if it's cloudy for multiple days, it'll drop way down. I mean, it'll end up being practically, in the 50s and 60s, which is what you buy it at. So when I'm talking about lifting from 80 degrees up to 120, and we're using gas, remember I create electricity on the roof of that house, but because of the production of therms, the highest performance in terms of heat comes from natural gas, followed by oil and propane, and finally by electric. It's just less efficient to generate the heat with electricity. So we are talking about a fraction of the cost that a normal on-demand system would cost because we're priming it so aggressively. It's hard to say because the data that I'm seeing from 25 to 40, sometimes 50% of savings for typical pitches when it comes to the on-demand system are going to have savings that come in 3 years. You're looking at reducing cost at a level where it could be $2,000 to put in these systems. It could be $3,500. People have to look at the 3/4-inch gas line. You've got to look at a stainless steel venting system, which is a direct vent. So as great as the on-demand sounds, it's not right for every household. But I can tell you we're in for, it's tens of dollars. Like, we were over the summer at about a $12 Pico bill plus the base charge. And, in the dead of winter, we'll see that lift. But the reality is we're buying back some of the electricity that we, in effect, squirreled away. I can't wait for the day with the smart meter because I'm doing artificial intelligence where I'm counting the actual kilowatts daily and recording them. It's not as easy on the gas. So I don't have a short answer for you other than that it's so cost effective because of the hot water. I'm not able to score it, effectively at every single month.
Okay. We have another question. Good.
Just looking at my own home, it can get kind of complicated when you have different systems and different appliances that are different ages and parts of system, the air conditioning and the heater being big units that have different ages, and the outside compressor being a different age. How does that all get wrapped up in looking at what the opportunities are? Because obviously, if you're going to upgrade or renovate or change some of these systems, you have to dispose of the old ones, and that in and of itself creates some issues.
Sean or I could probably address this. I'll tell you quickly, I've been in homes where there was a 20-year-old air conditioning system, and the family had been told by various professionals, whether they were auditors or a rep from the energy company, that was the unit that needed to be replaced. But by looking at the whole property, looking at the whole lifestyle impact of the family, we learned that there were 4 or 5 kids, and they were running like 3 loads of laundry a day. And we ran the base load electric. We saw that they had a brand new Energy Star electric water heater. Well, it turns out they were draining that thing like every other hour between the showers and the laundry. They only had a handful of, it was a few $100s over the course of the summer in the lift in electric consumption relative to base load because they were running ceiling fans. We ended up putting in a whole house fan, so they practically reduced the AC load to nothing, and we let the old air conditioner ride. But we swapped out the electric water heater for the on-demand system because of that payback potential. It was so dramatically faster because of how they lived in that house. If that same family loved keeping it freezing cold and was sucking through air conditioning and was not prepared to turn fans off and on as they use different rooms, it would have been an entirely different recommendation. So age of hardware is entirely a function in terms of recommendations to how the whole house operates, how the family lives in that house, and what the current tax incentives happen to be, and the PICO incentives, if it's locally here in Pennsylvania. So it's really a tricky question, because unless you step back, and Sean put it up on the screen too, and look at the whole property and how that home conveys, energy in and out and what is going on with the family, we could sit here and tell you that maybe the oldest systems just need an Intellidyne microprocessor for an old boiler. It's like fixing the carburetor on a great old Mercedes. You don't have to throw it away. That's an electrical process that literally listens to the burn cycles. There's one for hot water and for forced air. We've often recommended salvaging what is existing old equipment and using technology where I tell this, it's a kind of a joke, but the doctor says, eat 5 smaller meals a day than 3 big ones. This microprocessor for about $300 or $400 listens for 72 hours to your burn cycle on a boiler and then adjusts how it is in effect eating power. Well, that's a lot better than a $5,000 new HVAC system. And some of this stuff back in the day, this is from the the 70s and 60s, was built like a tank. Keep it. It's not always the case, but this is about, again, professionals going in and looking at every single incremental aspect of a home, not just making a blanket sales pitch on a new high-performance system because they get a rebate on the back end as an installer.
Okay, we've exhausted our time, so thank you very much, everybody. One last thing. A lot of questions probably still out there. Each one of you, if you could, what's your website? How can our community members get a hold of you? So in 2 seconds each. Sean?
www.hometowngreen.net or .com.
We're pretty easy. Pico, www.pico.com.
greenandsave.com.
GHRconsultingservices.com.
All right, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Again, thanks to Radnor Township and the EAC, League of Women Voters, Radnor Conservancy, and please keep in tune with all the great initiatives, again, that we're having here at Radnor Township. Thanks, everybody.